Good afternoon and welcome to Protect Your Credit and Identity with Cybersecurity Awareness. My name is Ashley Gordon. I am the Program Officer for Financial Literacy and Outreach here at the National Credit Union Administration, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few administrative notes. Next slide. First, all attendees will be in listen-only mode. If your volume sounds too low, check to make sure your volume is turned all the way up on your computer. If that doesn't work, you may have to plug in external speakers. As well, if you have questions, you can submit them at any time using the Q&A located at the bottom right corner of your WebEx console. To submit a question, simply click the Q&A button. Type your question into the box provided and then just click send. Lastly, closed captions will be available within WebEx. To enable captions, click the CC in the bottom left of your console. Next slide. I'll quickly read this disclaimer, which states that the views and opinions expressed of the presenters do not reflect the official views of, nor should be considered an endorsement by the Board of Directors, management, or staff of the National Credit Union Administration. Next slide. Alrighty, October is National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, a time to raise awareness about digital security and empower everyone to protect their personal data from digital forms of crime. Because cybercrime is often linked to identity theft and the theft of individuals' hard-earned money, we have brought together a team of experts from the Federal Trade Commission and National Credit Union to discuss how to combat, prevent, and recover from cybercrime and identity theft. Please allow me to introduce Todd Finkler. He is the Cybersecurity Advisor and Coordinator at the National Credit Union Administration. As well, we have Andrew Ryo, Consumer Education Specialist with the Federal Trade Commission's Division of Consumer and Business Education. As well, we have Alvaro Puig, Consumer Education Specialist with the Division of Consumer and Business Education at the Federal Trade Commission. Welcome to you all. I'd also like to introduce Jennifer Leach, the Associate Director for the Division of Consumer and Business Education at the Federal Trade Commission, and Matthew Belores, the Director for the Office of Consumer Financial Protection at the National Credit Union Administration. They will both provide opening remarks. Jennifer, please take the floor.
Ashley, thank you so much. We are so grateful to be here today with you. I'm Jennifer Leach. As Ashley said, I am head of the Division of Consumer and Business Education here at the Federal Trade Commission, where our job as an agency is to protect consumers from unfair and deceptive practices and fight fraud and identity theft. We do this in a lot of different ways, and you'll hear some of those from Alvaro and Andrew later. But for right now, we're thrilled to be here with you in National Cybersecurity Month. Security Awareness Month rather, and we especially appreciate the opportunity to work with credit unions. One of the things that we firmly believe in our division is that people believe messages better and hear them better when they come from someone they trust. And I would say that there's no one better trusted in communities than credit unions. So whenever there is an opportunity for us to work together, we are happy to do that because you're at the heart of the communities that you're in, and the messages that we all want to share will mean more coming from you. Now, Andrew and Alvaro will tell you a lot more about identity theft later today, as will Todd, but they'll also tell you about how we have a lot of free materials. And did I mention that they are free? We will send them for free. They are free. And we hope that they will be useful to you in getting word out to your members and helping them protect themselves. We are looking for any opportunity to do that. Andrew and Alvaro will be happy to follow up with you. I'm always happy to follow up with you. But please reach out to Andrew and Alvaro for how we can all work together to help protect your members from identity theft and all sorts of fraud. So thank you once again for letting us join your network and for the opportunity to speak with you all today. And with that, I will hand over to Matthew.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate you and your team partnering with us for this event today. And thanks to all of our attendees for joining us as well. Each year during the month of October, the National Credit Union Administration joins other federal agencies and national organizations to take part in Cybersecurity Awareness Month. During this time, we work to raise awareness and promote best practices related to cybersecurity for both consumers and credit unions. This year marks 20 years since Cybersecurity Awareness Month was first observed, and its mission has never been more crucial. In a world that depends more and more on online connectivity to do everyday tasks like banking, shopping for groceries, scheduling medical appointments, and finding a new home, it is essential that individuals and organizations safeguard information from cybercriminals seeking to steal their data and money. Identity theft, a common and unfortunate outcome of cybercrime, cost American consumers $52 billion in 2021. And earlier this year, it was reported that the cost of cybercrimes could reach $10.5 trillion by the year 2025. These numbers are staggering. And sadly, there is often no recourse for individuals who lose their money and see their credit decimated by cyber thieves. At the NCUA, we know how important it is to feel financially secure and stable to reach your goals. And we understand how devastating cybercrime can be to all consumers, but particularly vulnerable communities such as older Americans and those already struggling financially. So this month, we are making this important topic a priority by promoting the Secure Our World 2023 and Beyond campaign. Along with our partners across the federal government, we hope the effort to build a safer, more trusted digital world through small behavioral changes helps people and organizations to be safer online. Today's webinar with the Federal Trade Commission will focus on how to spot cybercrime and identity theft, and how consumers and credit unions can use cybersecurity to prevent cybercrime. The NCUA's Office of Consumer Financial Protection is committed to supporting consumers through proactive steps like cybersecurity. Webinars like this, along with the various educational resources available on mycreditunion.gov, help us to drive this year's message and provide tools to consumers, credit unions, and financial educators so they are better equipped to protect themselves and others. We thank you for joining us for this important conversation. Ashley, I'll turn the program back over to you.
Thank you, Matt. As you know, the National Credit Union Administration has, or you may know, the National Credit Union Administration has a Consumer Assistance Center, which assists consumers in resolving disputes with credit unions and provides information about federal consumer financial protection matters. Often our team of specialists receive inquiries from individuals who have been unknowingly the victims of cybercrime. We want to share some of those stories with you today. Next slide. While we've changed some of these names and provided aliases to protect these consumers' identities, these are true stories that we've heard actually in just the last year. I'd like to introduce you to Cynthia. Cynthia sold her home and put the proceeds into what she thought was a legitimate credit union account. Unfortunately, it was actually a cyber criminal who had duplicated a credit union's website that also had a similar URL. Her money was stolen. All of the proceeds from her home sale were taken away. This is not uncommon. Thieves will create almost identical websites that look like your financial institution, but they're actually just fronts that steal your information and your money. Next slide. Next, I'll introduce Douglas. Douglas received a text message that said that it was from his credit union. The text requested that he provide his account information so that they could address a problem with his account. Douglas willingly gave the information to what he thought was his credit union, and his account was emptied. All of his money was taken out. It wasn't until he reached out to his credit union and to us here at the National Credit Union Administration directly, and he was able to conclude that he had indeed been scammed. This is another story we've heard pretty commonly as well. Thieves will make you believe that they are a trusted source. They'll reach out to you via text message, via email, etc., and they'll have information about you. They'll know that you are a member of ABC Credit Union, and once they have gotten you to believe that they're a trusted source, they'll get you to provide information and then steal your money or open accounts in your name. Unfortunately for both Cynthia and Douglas, these were examples of cybercrime, and more specifically, phishing and spoofing. But for Douglas and Cynthia, they didn't know what to look out for in order to be able to protect themselves with cybersecurity best practices. Next slide. So what is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is considered the art of protecting networks, devices, and data from unauthorized access or criminal use. More specifically for consumers, it's an essential safety component when using, whether it's your computer or any kind of mobile online device, and certainly when you're using online platforms. Next slide. Why is cybersecurity important? Well, strong cybersecurity protects individuals and organizations from cyber criminals looking to steal money and identities. And certainly for organizations, criminals look to disrupt business operations. We've seen this quite a bit in recent years, big data breaches that wreak havoc on businesses as well. Next slide. It can be hard to spot cybercrime, so we wanted to provide you all with some examples of what it actually looks like. And my colleagues will dive more into this throughout their presentations, but I'll just kind of provide a high-level explanation. One, cybercrime presents itself in many forms that can lead to your personal information being stolen, and ultimately, whether it's your identity or your money, they get taken away and can wreak havoc on your finances. A few examples that you may or may not be familiar with are things like malware. Malware can get installed onto your computer. It will create viruses, and many of us have experienced this in the past. You start getting a whole bunch of ads on your computer screen. You can't get them off. Oftentimes they're inappropriate ads, and they are continuing to put viruses onto your computer or onto any of your devices. As well, we know that ATM skimmers have become more and more popular over the years. Maybe you go to an ATM or you go to the gas station, you use your debit card, you put in your code, and an illegal device has been installed onto that ATM, and it captures your PIN number, and they're able to access your accounts. As well, social media and Wi-Fi. You have to be very careful about using Wi-Fi in public spaces because you could be simply using your computer and someone could be jumping onto that Wi-Fi to be able to get into your personal information, particularly if you're logging into banking information on a Wi-Fi network. And as well, social media. We often think that we're just sharing sweet pictures of our families or of ourselves and where we are in the world when we travel, but unfortunately, cyber criminals will see that and be able to use that information against you to be able to steal your identity. So now I want to be able to dive into this a bit deeper. I'm going to toss this to Todd, who's going to give us a deep dive on prevention and the cost of cybercrime in this country. Todd.
Thanks, Ashley. My name is Todd Finkler. You heard that already, so let's go to the next slide, please, Franz. So talk a little bit about cybercrime. So you actually heard some really big numbers from Matt, so these aren't as as big as those numbers. This is only what has been reported, and what we found is that what's been reported is merely the tip of the iceberg. But the FBI last year, their Internet Crime Complaint Center, got a little over 800,000 complaints in 2022. And which would equated to about $10.3 billion in losses that people put in these complaints, which is about a 49% increase in 2021. We believe the real number is much larger than this, but it does make you stop and go, oh my gosh, what can we do to stop? Sorry, I went on mute for some reason. So next slide, please. So as we think about these problems, there was the Verizon put out a information on data breaches and recently, and it covered that the financial industry alone, each breach was actually affected, cost about $5.9 million per breach. And so that is also a very high number because we're talking like hundreds of thousands of breaches. And so what I wanted to dig into a little bit is have folks that aren't familiar with cybersecurity get a little bit more into understanding what's going on. And I want to kind of flip the image from, you know, it's about me and attacks, but to understand what the attacker is doing. So if you look at the bottom of the chart, it gives you some very high level basic steps that an attacker will do to get to some value, whether it is your financial information, whether it's actual money from you, or whether that's personal data that they can use to get financial or to get money. And they include things like getting an initial foothold, exploiting if they find a vulnerability, any lateral movement that they have to get to, depending on where they come into your network, and then talking about elevating the privileges for a domain admin until they get what they're looking for. And if we look at those type of attack tactics in the financial sector alone, which is what we're really referring to today, they talk about the amount of those attacks that actually have some part of that tactic. And we can look at those to understand what we can do better in the future. And so the first thing that they noticed in all these attacks is roughly half of the attacks are simple password attacks. And so we'll talk about what you could do with that in the coming slides. But that's a huge amount of attacks that gives them the first step in getting into your network and taking over, stealing information or stealing money from you. The second piece of it is system intrusions happen over a third of the time. And what that means is whatever system that you're using is actually used because it's got some vulnerability that maybe you don't know about. And it really that's where ideally I would want 100% of the attacks to involve a system intrusion, because oftentimes that means that you're raising the bar and you're really stopping all the unskilled cyber criminals out there, and you're really raising the bar to make it so it's really the skilled cyber criminals. So it reduces the number of attackers essentially. The third thing that they've seen is human errors are responsible for about a third of the time. And that means, accidentally, logging into a website that you didn't realize was a fake website, or sending personal information across an email that you probably shouldn't be sending that personal information, or, setting up your network or not doing the right security things. That happens about a third of the time. And the fourth one is social engineering, which happens about a quarter of the time. And so you'll notice if you look at these three out of the four of them, the attack tactics that are used involve humans. And that's important as we think about who's involved in this. A lot of us think of cybersecurity as somebody else is going to be doing it, but in reality, cybersecurity is all about people. And I mean, you could have all the tools in the world, but if you don't use the tools correctly, or you're not aware of what's going on, then it makes it easier for you to fall prey to the cyber criminals. Next slide, please. So let's look at online behaviors for a second, and this is a findings from a On Behave article that I have linked down at the bottom of the slides. So 33% of the individuals. So we talked about passwords being nearly 50 used as an attack tactic nearly 50% of the time. So only 33% of the individuals create unique passwords for all accounts. And of those, only 18% download a password manager to manage that. And then we talked about multi-factor authentication, also to help with that password, the 50% password problem. 43% of the folks out there surveyed did not even recognize or did not even know what multi-factor authentication means. And then lastly, 92% of the respondents took action after a security training. They had some amount of training that taught them a little bit more about cybersecurity and what they could do about it. So I'm glad you're here, because this is part of some of that training that you can learn more about cybersecurity and upping your cybersecurity game. Next slide, please. And so I think of, whenever I think about what things we do to increase our cybersecurity, what I'm thinking about is from the perspective of the adversary. And I like to think about things I can do with the control to really make it a lot harder on the adversary, and to raise their cost of actually attacking me. And that's just a perspective I like, because it makes me feel like I'm a little bit more in control and gives me a little bit more ownership into the problem. Because as I said before, a lot of these challenges are caused by people, right? So I want to be more knowledgeable about how the adversary attacks me and what I can do to raise their cost. And so there's four things that the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency puts out every year items that you can do to up the adversary's cost. And in this year's program, they talk about 4 things that you can do: use strong passwords and a password manager, turn on multi-factor authentication, recognize and report phishing attacks, and update your software. And you'll notice that the first 2 alone really try to address that 50% of the attacks use weak passwords or default passwords. And so both of the first top two really attack that. And then the phishing attacks really, it goes against the social engineering piece of it, recognizing and reporting phishing, and then the updated software. So we'll talk about each of those individually. So this is you personally, anywhere you are can do this kind of stuff. And you can do it in your home devices, and even the first 2 you can do at your you can definitely do it, at your workplace. So I'll talk about credit unions and what they can do on the last slide. But in the meantime, we're going to focus just on individuals and what they can do. Next slide, please. So strong passwords and a password manager. And so this is going to make this may make many of you feel uncomfortable. I'm expecting 16 characters. I don't want to reuse any password on any website that I have that I value. And then all of them are going to be complex, meaning uppercase and include uppercase and lowercase, numbers, special characters, and space, and even spaces in them. And that's a lot to remember, especially, I actually have a password manager, and I looked recently, and just my passwords, forget all my family's passwords, are now well over 100. So to do that is quite a task. And so that's the second piece of this, is not only do you have strong passwords, but you can get a password manager. Modern password managers help you create, not only do they store your passwords in an encrypted file, so it's hard for adversaries to get to, but it also helps you generate these strong passwords, and actually gives you, oftentimes they give you some measure of, hey, this is a strong password, good job, or to alert you for weak or duplicate passwords. And I love that because, it makes it a lot easier to create those passwords and then make it a lot harder for the adversary. To really knock down that 50% of attacks use weak passwords. Let's get rid of that 50%. That seems like a really easy fix. Next slide, please. So the second thing is turn on multi-factor authentication. So multi-factor could be 2-factor, it could be more factor. Most people use 2-factor authentication. And it's basically, it's either what you know, or who you are, or what you have, right? Those are the 3 things that go into multi-factor authentication. It could be a code sent to your phone through a text message or an email. That's probably the lowest level of multi-factor authentication, but still makes it easier because they can't just use pure guessing of passwords or easy passwords for the adversary. So I'm raising my cost there. If you want to go one step further, you're going to add authentication app that you can get on your phone. And what that provides is a one-time password that you can use that is also known by the website, so that they know what it is, and you know what it is, and you can provide that information. The adversary has to get on your phone or figure out what your authenticator app is doing, so it raises the cost of the adversary there. And then the highest level are the security key. For instance, you can use hardware security keys that you could buy outright, such as a YubiKey, or you can use your phones. Oftentimes will have secure chips on them that you can use as a security key also. In addition to that, the phones also provide, and many laptops nowadays, fingerprint or facial recognitions. And those are probably the top level of multi-factor authentication. So where do you use those? If I just talked about having over 100 passwords, do I use multi-factor authentication on all those, 100 sites that I have passwords to? The answer is simply no. Not everybody offers multi-factor authentication, but you should be using multi-factor authentication in anything you really care about. And so what does that mean? What other sites do I care about? I care about my financial sites, any of my banks, my credit unions. Any of those sites, I look for multi-factor authentication. Matter of fact, if they don't have it, I reach out to them and say, why don't you have multi-factor authentication? It has been around long enough that most people should be able to offer you multi-factor authentication. The second thing I use sites for, to use multi-factor authentication for, is my social sites. That becomes part of me. So any sites that I have that are social related, whether it be Meta or Facebook or anything that's social related that I would use, I will use, that's important to me. I don't want someone taking over my persona. And so you use multi-factor authentication. And the third thing I use it for is email has become so important and such a big part of our lives that I want that to be kept safe also. Next slide, please. So the third thing that CISA recommends is recognize and report phishing. And really this gets tricky because human beings are designed to recognize physical security problems. So if you walk down a dark alley at night and you don't feel comfortable, you're going to be very aware of what's going on, or maybe you choose not to go down that dark alley because you feel a threat, right? We don't do as good of a job when it comes to the digital environment. We're pretty free with our information. We are, we can be tricked relatively easy by doing simple things. So we all need to become a little bit more aware or create a little bit higher digital awareness associated with this. And in one of these cases is reporting phishing. Now, remember, I talked about in the first slide that 25% of the attacks use some form of social engineering. Phishing is probably the most prominent of that. And so phishing, when you see phishing and things that help you understand phishing is, is the tone, is it urgent and making you scared? Because when you're urgent and scared, you don't think as clearly and you don't make as good of decisions. And so understanding that when someone's trying to make you, scared, or if there's an urgent, immediate sense of it, then that may be an indicator that there's a phishing going on. And this really applies to all the social engineering also. If you see bad spelling or bad grammar, most of the phishing or many of the phishing attacks come from overseas and where English is not their first language. And so that gives you indications that this may be someone who's, not supposed to be doing this stuff. If they request you to send personal information, you need to be aware of that and really think about, questioning that. And you can easily check on that kind of stuff. So if you think it may be phishing, but you're not sure, that's okay. The easy thing you could do is not click anything on the account, or if you get an email, not click anything on the email, or don't call the numbers they provide on an email. But if they say it's coming from, some vendor that or some bank that call that, figure out that bank's phone number, searching through some search engine on the internet, and call them using that, or using it off your statement or whatnot. And you can call to say, hey, I got this. Does this make sense? And that allows them, your bank or your credit union, to actually do due diligence and send that information out to other people if they know people are trying to do phishing. And then look for emails that aren't there, and then an email you weren't expecting. Okay, so next slide, please. Next slide, please. We already saw that. So for phishing, here are the big things not to do, right? Don't click on any links that are in that email. Don't click on any attachments that are in the email, and don't send personal information. So there's a bunch of different, I'll explain why not to do those things real quick. There's a bunch of different web or attacks that they can use with phishing. One might be that they try to get you to a fake website and they ask for personal information, and you share that information and they use it. That's kind of a low end, cyber attack. There are fancier attacks that if you click on a link, it takes you to a website you've just downloaded malware because you clicked on that link. Same thing with attachments. They can embed all sorts of malware or bad things that would infect your computer or your phone just by clicking on the link. And so, as I talked about before, what things you do for phishing attacks is verify the information they're providing. If they say you're late on a payment, then look up call your vendor on a known number, not using the email, or through a separate means to get that number and verify it with them and ask them if this is what's going on. You can even contact that person directly. If it's someone there's a recent string of attacks has been trying to attack people that and then using maybe they take over their persona and then they use them to ask you for information. Contact that person using a different means. Call them and say, hey, are you doing this? And then the other good thing for you to do is to make sure you try to report it to your IT department or your email or phone provider. And then the last thing is delete it. Don't use anything that's on there. Next slide, please. Okay, and the last thing that CISA recommends is updating your software. And so most devices now that you have come with regular software updates. And that's a great thing. And so, so I always turn on so that they're automatic updates. It makes it a little bit harder if you're a credit union because you need to think about what you're updating it and how it impacts the service you provide. But for my personal stuff, I always make sure I update it as soon as possible. So that comes with phones. Most of the larger phone manufacturers have either immediate updates or slightly delayed updates that you need to update as soon as they put it out. And so if you think about why you would want to do this, if I'm a bad guy and I see a software update, let's say on a phone, all I need to do is take the old software and compare it with the new software update that they have. And that gives me some idea of avenues to exploit whatever that device is. And so updating it, it's basically a race. When they see that update come out, bad guys will start to look at those differences and then start to create exploits against those differences. And so the sooner they get their exploit done, the sooner they'll start attacking those devices. And so the sooner you can get that software updated, the sooner you make yourself safe from those specific attacks. And next slide, please. All right, so we talked a lot about how individuals, and I'm gonna emphasize the point again that individuals are super important as part of cybersecurity because all it takes is one individual to make a mistake, and then that may expose the network, to the adversary because they have their foot in. They got the entryway into the network. And so now I'm going to spend one quick slide because we just went over this on the board meeting last Thursday, which you can look at on NCUA's website. We talked about for the credit unions what the credit unions could do to raise the adversary's cost. And so I'll talk about a couple things, and some of the things we've already talked about, so we won't go into detail. The number one thing again is multi-factor authentication. If you have cyber systems, if you have systems that are online, multi-factor authentication helps reduce that 50% of attacks that are going to be using weak or default passwords. The second thing credit unions can do is they can look to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency's Shields Up program. And that program gives credit unions, the ones that probably don't have the resources to spend a tremendous amount of money on cybersecurity, that gives them the idea of what are the big things that they need to do, the high level things that they should be doing. So I'll talk about CISA just real quick because I don't talk about it anywhere else. But CISA is, for the credit unions in particular, CISA is a great resource because it's their job to help with critical infrastructure, of which credit unions are part of. So they also have advisors in each of the regions that you can get in contact with as a credit union and build a relationship with and ask them cybersecurity questions. These are cybersecurity experts around the country. And that's their job to either provide resources or talk to you about resources that CISAs or other government agencies offer. And it's a great resource to take advantage of. The second thing credit unions can do is on that block is mitigate vulnerabilities. If you're not familiar, there's common vulnerabilities and exposures which are published on a regular basis, and they're published to everyone, and they're done so that that folks that develop software and hardware can update these vulnerabilities and make them mitigate those risks. So generally, when they're released, they come with a mitigation, and you can follow those things and make sure those vulnerabilities are mitigated as soon as possible. Because often, again, bad guys will look at these vulnerabilities as they're published, and they will say, oh, this is a great vulnerability. Let me try to figure out how to exploit it, or an exploit's already available in the wild, and I'm going to take advantage of it. So it's really a race to see how quickly you can update those critical and high vulnerabilities. CISA also provides a list of relative to those, relative to known exploited vulnerabilities. And then automated web scanning. CISA provides automated web scanning for credit unions. They can take advantage of that for their web-facing applications. And that automated web scanning will give you a weekly report on what vulnerabilities are available for you to mitigate. Third thing is increased training. So we talked about 25% of social engineering. So if you spend time increasing your training, whether it's be anti-phishing training, which is probably the biggest, or other cybersecurity training for your employees on your information technology network, great. That helps with reduce the social engineering piece of it, and it also helps with reduce the human errors that we talked about, which is about a third of the attack vectors we use. And the last thing that would be raising the adversary's costs for credit unions is there's other high impact, low cost activities. If you go to NCUA, we provide a lot more details of, and actually their NCUA cybersecurity resources where there's a lot more links to different other high impact, low cost activities that you can do. CISA has just put out a cross-sector performance goals, and what I really they offer different controls that you can use for cybersecurity. And what I like about it is it's starting to get to where I think we need to go, which is it's starting to tell you, hey, this is a high cost or a low cost or a medium cost, but here's the return on investment. This is it raises the cost of the adversary, a high amount, medium amount, a low amount. It's not exactly where we need to go, but it's definitely a right step in that direction. So you should leverage their cross-sector performance goals. And I think that's my last slide. Next slide, please. Just to make sure. Yes, that's great. So now I'm going to turn it over to Alvaro and Andrew from FTC. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Todd. And thank you all for attending today's webinar. We'd also like to thank the NCUA for hosting us. My name is Andrew Rayo, and I'm here today with my colleague Alvaro Puig. We're both with the Federal Trade Commission's Division of Consumer and Business Education, and we're going to take turns presenting today on how to avoid and recover from identity theft. Identity theft usually happens when someone uses your personal information to open accounts, file taxes, and buy things. To address this issue, the Federal Trade Commission has lots of resources to empower people to spot, avoid, and report identity theft, including identitytheft.gov, which we'll talk about a little bit later. First, I'd like to turn it over to Alvaro so we can see what reports that FTC has received tell us about identity theft in the United States. Alvaro?
Thanks, Andrew. So in 2022, which is the last year we have information for, we got more than 1.1 million reports of identity theft. And so if we look at the breakdown, we can see that the number one type was credit card fraud, which accounted for 29% of reports. Next is government documents or benefits fraud, which accounted for 18% of reports. And that was followed by sort of a combination of categories: bank fraud and loan or lease fraud. Each of those accounted for 10% of reports. Next slide, please. So you can see here that identity theft reports in 2022 were down slightly compared to the two previous years, but still higher than the average of identity theft reports from the last 5 years. And when we look at 2020, we attributed that increase in particular to a surge in unemployment benefits claims using stolen identities that were a result of the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Alvaro. Now, we're going to take a moment to talk about how identity thieves use technology to try to get your information. I'm sure you've probably seen emails that look legitimate. Maybe it looks like it's coming from your bank or credit card company or a utility. They often ask you to confirm or verify your password, your account number, or even your social security number. But it's not from that business. And do you know how to tell? Because your bank, credit card company, or utility would never email and ask you for that information. That's a phishing scam every time. We'll tell you how to report those and other scams in just a minute. The same kind of request can come via text message, which is known as smishing. A lot of these bogus text messages include a link, which might take you to a lookalike page for the company, or it might land you on a page that installs malware on your phone or computer. And we know you heard a little bit earlier about what to do in that situation. The lesson here is not to click links in text messages that come out of the blue. Next slide, please. Lots of people have lost their information in data breaches. There are several examples in recent history where identity thieves have stolen millions of customer records, including credit card and passport numbers. Thieves have, unfortunately, figured out ways to get information from our credit and debit cards. You might know about skimming, which is a way thieves can read and copy the information on the magnetic strip on the back of the card. It lets the criminal make a copy of the card. But shimming is a bit of an update, where thieves put a shim into a card reader so they can copy the information on the chip. They then use that to clone the magnetic strip and use that on a copy of your card. Next slide, please. Once information is stolen, identity theft can happen in a variety of ways. For example, someone might get credit in your name, maybe opening a new credit card, utility accounts, or getting a new loan. People who've experienced identity theft might also find that someone applied for a tax refund, a job, or got medical care, all in their name. You can see on the slide many of the issues that identity theft can cause, not least of which could be stress, legal problems, and the time and money it takes to recover. Next slide, please. But there are some ways to reduce the risk of identity theft. As you can see here on the slide, you can review your mail, particularly your financial statements. Check your credit report every year. You can get a free credit report from annualcreditreport.com, and there'll be more on that in just a moment. Protect your Social Security and Medicare numbers, store documents securely, shred before discarding, file taxes early. There's so many different ways that you can reduce the risk of identity theft. Next slide, please. Now, I had mentioned many ways of protecting yourself against identity theft, but the one that I really want to emphasize here is checking your credit report every year. There's been a recent update where the three nationwide credit bureaus, you I'm sure are familiar with, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, announced a permanent change where you can get a free copy of your credit report once a week. To order your free credit reports online, go to annualcreditreport.com. Each credit bureau might have slightly different information, so it's worth checking your report with all three. When you get your report, which summarizes your credit history, check it for signs of identity theft, such as an incorrect name, address, social security number, or an employer you don't actually work for, accounts you don't recognize, charges you don't recognize on your current accounts, credit inquiries from companies you didn't contact. That means someone could be shopping for credit in your name. Any of those could simply be a mistake, but it could also be a warning sign of identity theft. So once you've reviewed your reports, if there are mistakes, you'll want to fix those. You can learn more about how to dispute errors on your credit report by going to ftc.gov/credit. But if you think you might have spotted identity theft, then you'll go straight to identitytheft.gov, where you can report it and get a personalized recovery plan. More on that in just a moment. Next slide, please. The best way to reduce your risk of identity theft is by placing what's called a credit freeze. It's a free way to shield your credit from scammers and identity thieves because nobody can apply for credit in your name. You place a freeze with each of the three credit bureaus, again, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, and it's there until you lift it. If you need to apply for credit, it's also very easy and free to temporarily lift that credit freeze. It doesn't hurt your credit score or keep you from using the cards that you already have. You'll see here that another way to protect your credit is a fraud alert. These are mainly for people who think or know for a fact that someone stole their identity. It tells businesses to check with you before opening a new account in your name. It's also free, and you place a fraud alert by contacting one of those credit bureaus. It generally lasts for a year. Now I'll hand it back over to Alvaro.
Thanks, Andrew. Next slide, please. So even when you take steps to protect your identity, unfortunately, identity theft can still happen. Our website, identitytheft.gov, is the place to go to report and recover from identity theft. Reporting is quite easy. You come to the site, you click Get Started, and then follow a series of prompts. Through those prompts, you'll put in details about how the thief used your identity. And based on that information, the site is going to create a customized recovery plan for you. This recovery plan gives you step-by-step guidance on what to do to recover from identity theft. And the site offers recovery plans for more than 30 types of identity theft. Identitytheft.gov also creates an identity theft report, which you can use instead of a police report to prove that identity theft happened to you. Local law enforcement agencies can access these reports through the Consumer Sentinel Network to help in their investigations. And the site is also available in Spanish at robodeidentidad.gov. Next slide, please. So we mentioned reporting scams earlier in our presentation. We also have an easy way for you to report scams, frauds, and bad business practices at reportfraud.ftc.gov. You'll first tell us what happened, and after you answer a few questions and submit your report, you'll get a report number. That report number lets you add updates if you have them. You'll also get some next steps to take. And if you give us your email address, we'll send you this information by email as well. By reporting scams, you help the FTC and our law enforcement partners with their investigations, which can lead to cases that help stop scams. The FTC also uses the reports to alert others in the community about scams they're hearing about. And in Spanish, the report fraud site is available at reportefraude.ftc.gov. Next slide, please. And finally, there are phone numbers that you can call to report scams and identity theft in English, Spanish, and multiple other languages. When you call one of these numbers, you can press 3 to speak to an interpreter in languages such as Mandarin, Vietnamese, French, Arabic, Russian, and more. Next, please.
Thanks, Alvaro. Now that you're all part of our network, we really hope that you'll share what you learned with people you know. The best way to keep up with the latest from the FTC, including the top scams it sees, is to sign up to get consumer alerts at ftc.gov/consumer alerts or ftc.gov/alertas de consumidor to get them in Spanish. ftc.gov/bulk order, or in Spanish, ftc.gov/ordenar is where you can order printed materials for free in English and Spanish. The FTC will also ship them to you for free. Whether you get FTC materials online or in print, we hope you'll share them within your credit union and community. Next slide, please. We'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. And I just want to take a quick moment to say that if you happen to have your phones readily available, we would really encourage you to sign up for consumer alerts at ftc.gov/consumer alerts. We have an active blog where we're able to update everyone who signs up on the latest scams or just general announcements or advice that we have from the FTC. So please consider signing up at ftc.gov/consumer alerts. And here's our contact information. As Jennifer said at the very beginning of our webinar, we are always available and happy to help. Feel free to reach out to either myself or Alvaro. And again, thank you to the NCUA for hosting us. I'd like to hand it now over to Ashley.
Thank you both and to Todd for such great presentations. We really appreciate it. And I'll actually, Franz, next slide. I'll also just share, and I know Matt mentioned earlier, NCUA has a consumer-facing website called mycreditunion.gov. There you can find all kinds of information related to fraud and fraud prevention. We specifically have information on cybersecurity, and actually just this morning released an infographic on cybersecurity tactics and how to protect yourself against identity theft. So I'll make sure to drop that link into the chat as well. I think we have a little bit of time for questions. So actually, I think I'll ask for Todd and for Andrew, if you want to come back on screen, we can try and see if there are any questions in the chat that we'd like to answer. Let me look and see what we have. I think this one might be for Todd. I see, can password managers be hacked?
I love the question. Let's see, who did that? Was it Shelly? So great question. Yes, they can be hacked. Absolutely can be hacked. There's anything, matter of fact, if you touch anything that's got a relative a computer to an internet, it can be hacked, right? So there's nothing that's impossible. The password managers, it's their business to protect that information. So they spend a lot of time thinking about security. And so number one, they've done a really nice job in general of protecting that information. But the second thing I do that I actually use the password manager for any account that I really care about. Remember, we talked about the financial, email and social accounts that I really care about. I'll actually I won't put my full password in there. So I'll make them create a really hard password, and then I'll add a letter or a number or even a couple letters and numbers. It's called a salt or a pepper that I'll have to add to the end of it. So I'll have them create a password. I'll store that password, and then every time I go to the website, I'll tell them to remember that password, and then I put my extra things that I know. So that if someone does, because I'm really, really anal about this stuff, if someone does get access to my password manager, then I at least have protection. They won't have access to all my important passwords. So great question. Thank you.
You and I'd see. I'm just looking through. I saw one. Okay. It says your cell phone has been stolen. How do you get into your bank and other accounts, credit union accounts, that would require a two-factor authentication? Todd, do you have any thoughts on that
Yeah,
one?
I do. Thanks.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Who was that? It was Leslie. Yeah, that's another great question. So there are a lot of things you can do. One is your bank's still going to have the traditional way or credit union is going to still have the traditional way of actually understanding who you are. So I recently just had funnily enough, just had my phone hacked into. I went through the process of getting redoing the phone and kind of swiping it and putting all new software on that. And so I just had to go through this myself. All it took was ended up calling my credit union at the time and said, hey, this is what happened. And I need to get access back to my account. Oftentimes you'll have extra information in there. Sometimes they collect information where you said, maybe something that only you know in there. Or they ask for a PIN that helps identify you. What I do in a lot of my sites that I protect with multi-factor authentication, I have multiple forms of multi-factor authentication. So let's say I was using my phone, I actually have it so that I could I also have security keys. So I have those as backups that I could use to also authenticate myself, just to make it really easy if you use your phone for everything on two-factor authentication. That could be problematic. The other thing you could do is if you use your phone and you have an authenticator app, which is one step up for tech from text and an email. Those are great because some of the authenticator apps, not only do they encrypt the information that's there, but they also allow you to transfer the information from different devices. So it makes it easier just to load that back on, and you have your information stored, so you're ready to do that multi-factor authentication. Great question and concern, Leslie. Thank you.
And then I just see one last question. What was the best, or what is the best way to get fraud and scam information out to members, to credit union members? Andrew or Alvaro, do you have any thoughts?
Absolutely. I mean, there are several ways to do it. One of the best ways for sure, especially given how easy it is to access the internet via phone or other devices, is to share the consumer alerts, ftc.gov/consumer alerts, to be able to see the FTC's ongoing blog. It's a series of blog posts on different matters. It could be, scams that we're seeing. It just anything that's very time sensitive. Sometimes it can be related to current events, weather emergencies, anything at all affecting consumers. You can find those updates on the blog. I'd also recommend checking out ftc.gov/bulk order, because we have those free publications that are on all kinds of campaigns talking about scams that say older adults might see, specifically publications on identity theft and prevention. There's so many different types of publications available completely for free that are also shipped for free. We really value our partnership with our credit union partners, many of which do order publications from ftc.gov/bulk order. And again, we really encourage ordering as many as you need, whether there's an event or you just want to have them out in the community. You'll get them for free, and you can distribute them out to your partners. Those are my recommendations.
Yeah, I would just add that if you do subscribe to our email alerts, and if you have your own email marketing outreach that you do, you're welcome to use our content. You can adapt it, to sort of fit your tone and style, or you can literally copy and paste it and forward it to to your own members and subscribers. We don't require, authorization or approval to do that. We're very sort of low maintenance as far as it goes, as far as sharing information goes out there. So please feel free to do that. And if you have questions about what would be the best information to share, we'd be happy to talk with you about that.
Thank you both. And I'll just, I will piggyback and say the same thing. We have both publications that can be ordered, but we also have them on our website where you can print them out. If you want to have some of the resources like our infographics and other types of posters and flyers, you can put those directly on your website. Like, it is fine if you use our content on your websites. We have videos, our consumer tools, our consumer tips videos on mycreditunion.gov. You are welcome to be able to use those videos. We have them on credit, on cryptocurrency, housing, etc. If you want to put those, plug them into your website, you are welcome to do so. This information is out there for the public, and so we look at the credit unions and any other entities as partners to be able to get out important consumer protection information and financial education information out to consumers. And you can reach out to us. I will be sending, and I see a few questions in the comments about whether or not you'll get slides. I will make sure that everyone who registered for today's webinar will get a readout that will have today's presentation deck, as well as any links to the resources that have been mentioned, as well as our contact information, so that if you're looking for something more specific, we can try and help you to get there. Let me just make sure. I think I answered the questions about getting content. Oh, and then the last question I saw, when will today's presentation be available? Typically, the presentations are available within a week, 2 weeks tops on YouTube. Sometimes you get lucky and it's there tomorrow. So just check on our NCUA YouTube channel and you'll see this presentation as well. And we encourage you to share it with your networks. If there are no other questions, I am going to let everyone go. I want to give a big thank you to our partners over at the FTC, as well as my colleague, Todd Finkler. Thank you so much for your great presentations, and thank you to everyone who was in attendance today. We really appreciate you. Have a great day, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.